Good morning, everybody. I don't know when you're watching this. My name is Mike at Filmboy24. Today, I'm going to have a lot of fun because we're going over one of my all-time favorite 16mm movie cameras. Yep, that's right. It's the Cinema Products CP-16. Well, and some really old Vision stock. It's so good to be back, everybody. It's been a super busy past couple of weeks. I've been doing a ton of film transfers for people and some processing and some VHS transfers and blah, blah, blah. So I've been super busy and haven't had a whole lot of time, or as much time as I usually do, to put these videos together. But I'm back at it. I got a little break, so here we go. We're going to have a lot of fun today. And I'll tell you why. Why? Because the good old Cinema Products CP-16A is at the forefront of my desk. And I say the forefront because it's absolutely one of my favorite cameras, namely for two reasons. It's really quiet, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's a sync sound, crystal controlled sync sound camera, originally designed for news gathering purposes. They were quick and easy to load. You could actually load one side, I'll show you in a minute, one side of the magazine, close it up, and do the rest of all your loading in the broad daylight. So it's a beautiful little camera. It does have some drawbacks, but they don't outweigh the advantages. So let's get right into it. Like I said, it is crystal controlled. Here's one of the drawbacks. It's very big, bulky, and heavy. Now, I have a lot of 16mm cameras, and really the only one that I have that I could compare this to would be my Arri 16S. There isn't a whole lot of similarities other than my 16S does have a crystal sync motor to it. This one is built in. With the Arri 16S, you have to add the crystal motor. This camera is heavy. Like I say, it's bulky, it's heavy. It has a square, really square, flat bottom. So when you have it on your shoulder, you just have a chunk of steel resting on top of your shoulder. It's not ergonomic, especially by today's standards. Probably not by their standards back in the day either. They did have pads you could put on them and carry them with a little more ease back in the day. It weighs approximately, with the magazine and some film, approximately 17 pounds or about 7.7 kilograms. Yes, very heavy. This camera will only operate with the magazine attached. It will not accept 100-foot loads inside. You have to put your 100-foot loads in the magazine if that's what you're going to shoot. It was really intended for the 400-foot reels of film because out in the field when you were doing your news gathering, that's what you used. The camera has a sound head inside of it. Most people nowadays take those out. I've taken mine out, the little module that plugs in, because really there's no need for it. They don't make magnetic sound striped 16mm film anymore. I do have a couple of rolls of it, but I'm not really interested in shooting magnetic sound with these cameras. One of the things we're going to do today, I'm going to show you in just a bit, is how well they sync with the motors that come with them. In other words, when you shoot this film and you record separately, like I did, and you marry the two together, you have to do a whole lot of fidgeting to get the audio sort of to sync up with the film picture itself. You'll find out in just a minute. I did that with my Arri 16S and the crystal sync motor. If you want to see the results of that, I'll put a link somewhere up here for you to take a peek at that. This camera does have the classic Aerocon movements. Now, I have had a couple of the old Aerocon 16mm cameras in the past, and they're beautiful little cameras. Very bulky, much more so even than this. A lot harder to use. They were really more designed for studio use. The inside of the camera, well, with this one, you have to pop off the little rubber eye cup for the door to be able to completely open. Now, I'll try to give you close-ups whenever I can. There's not much to these cameras. You push down on the left side of the little button here, open it up, and there's the inside of the camera. Not real sure how good your view is. I'm sure you like that view. Anyway, it's a little bit tricky to load. Like a lot of 16mm cameras, there's a lot of rollers in this particular one to go through. That had something to do with it also being a sound camera as well. I'm not probably going to get into loading this camera. I might do that later, maybe just do a quick video on loading it later. But for today, I just want to talk about what it's capable of doing. Now, it has a 180-degree shutter. That simply means that about half the time, your film's not exposed to light. So it's pretty easy to figure out your shutter speeds based on your frames per second. When you're shooting at 24 frames per second, which is all this particular camera will shoot at, mine, there are some that have variable speeds. This is the A model, by the way, which is the non-reflex. There are some other differences between this one and the reflex models, but I can only speak to what I have right here. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second with a 180-degree shutter, then you just double it, and that's your shutter speed typically. So when I metered my film over here, I just metered it at a shutter speed of 1/50th. That's what my meter uses. That was the closest thing I could get, and that's close enough. Now, these cameras aren't without some faults. From what I understand, I've had 3 or 4 of these cameras in the past, and I really love this particular one. I don't have any trouble with it at all, but I know some have trouble with the little PCB boards or the electronic boards inside. I haven't run across that yet. Hopefully I do not. This camera's not been serviced since I've owned it. Maybe it should be. I don't use it enough probably, so I'm going to leave it for now. The magazine, it is a PLC-4A. That's standard. These cameras would also accept the old Mitchell type, sort of the Mickey Mouse ear 400-foot magazines. I prefer these PLC-4A magazines. They're belt driven. If you look right here on the side, as you start the camera, which we're going to do in a minute, you'll see the gear inside the camera, or the belt inside the camera, runs the belt via the little pulleys here, one on the magazine and one inside the camera that you can't see down there. One thing that's a little bit different with this is when you load it, your film on the take-up side comes out emulsion side out. It goes in emulsion in, it comes out emulsion side out, which is a little bit different. That's not how the Aeroflex works. Now, I wouldn't call that a drawback. It's just a sort of be aware of it. The magazines are very easy to install or snap on and remove. You simply take the belt here, pop it off just like that, and it stays on. There's a little pin down in here so that you don't lose your belt. It stays on this bottom pulley. There's a little button on the underside of the magazine. There's actually, you might think there's one on top, but go right underneath it, push the little button in, and pull the back of the magazine up, and then pull it back. Because there's a little lip on the front of the magazine here that has to slide under the little groove right here on the side. So to install, slide it under, keep the belt out of the way, snap it down. Now it's snapped tight, no worries, and it's light tight, well, hopefully. So when we take this off, I'm going to show you, I'm going to set this to the side just for a second. I'm going to show you the inside of the magazine. This magazine is different from the Airy magazines in that it has 2 doors, where the Aeroflex is one large door that opens up. The benefit for me, anyway, to this is that you can load one side, or load your feed side of the magazine, close the door. In other words, and I may have a 100-foot reel in here, you push and twist counterclockwise on both of these buttons, and voila, it opens up. Now I have my 100-foot daylight spool in here because I use the spools inside the mags if you're going to shoot 100-foot loads. Very, very, very easy to load. You orient, this goes in this way. Your left side of the magazine is your feed side, 9 position. So the film is this way, right here, and it comes off, the spool comes down. You go behind the little roller, out, straight out through the bottom of the magazine on this side. Close your door, push, and turn clockwise. Now everything else can be done in the daylight. So you open this side, same way you open the other side. You want to pull the film through the bottom of the magazine, feed it back through the other side under here, behind the roller, and then it feeds this way onto your daylight spool if you're using a 100-foot daylight load. Close it back up. And then if you need to pull film out, which you will, you pull from the feed side. You don't want to pull from your take-up side. In fact, you want to probably leave this out just hanging down one side and not complete this side yet until you're ready to thread your camera. It's actually quite a bit easier to do it that way because you're likely to lose it inside here. Anyway, that's it for the magazine. It's very simple. Now, the battery, or the power for this camera, is 20 volts. ARRI-S, 8 volts. This guy here, 20 volts. Now, the batteries that I have and use are reselled. Now, these batteries that I have were reselled in 2003, I believe. So almost 20 years ago, and it actually still works quite strong. I have 2 of them, and they still work well. And they're only 600 milliamp batteries, but there is 20 volts of them inside this little thing here. Now, let me move the magazine out of the way for a second. And I'm going to show you to take the battery out. There's a little button right here on the front. Right there on the front, you have to push that little button in and then push the back of the battery straight out. And sometimes they will fit in there a little bit snugly. Both of mine do. This was resold by Batteries Plus in 2003. I'm sorry, I take that back, 2005. Ooh, so these are like brand new. Anyway, this was an interesting design. The way you charge them, there's a positive and a negative ports here on the side, 2 tiny little holes. And the way you charge them is you take this big brick battery charger. This is one of the original CP or Cinema Products chargers. You plug it into your 110 outlet. And then it has this little, sort of just this little, I don't know, dongle here. It was really crazy wonky. But you would take your battery, you'd line it up with the 2 pins here, and just push it in. That's it. It really, nothing holds it in. As long as it makes contact and it's plugged in, it's charging. And there's a little charge light down at the bottom here on the front of your charger, if you have this particular charger. Take it off when it's ready to go, and you're ready to go. Now, there are variations to that charging system. Here's one that I have from White House Audio Visual, but the dongle is still the same, exactly the same. They made a port cover, magazine port cover. Now, I don't have the screw for the bottom of it, but this, you could just sort of set it on top. Front side goes in underneath that lip, and it sets down. See, there's a screw, the thread down on the bottom of this. Push that in, and then you're supposed to put a little something underneath it. I could probably fabricate something quite easy. But for the most part, you could just kind of leave it like that for now. Most of the controls on this camera, in the back here, most of these controls, like this entire side, is all for the audio. This is for the audio. This was your microphone inputs, and this was all your controls. You could mount a mixer down here at the bottom, and then all of your audio controls here. For me and mine, the only thing I really need to be concerned with is the on-off and the battery test. That's basically it back here for me. The handle is adjustable. And let me tell you, when I say this thing's heavy, it's heavy. You unscrew one side here of the handle, and as you can see, you can adjust it. And there's a gear. It's on a little gear system here. You put it where you want it, where you're comfortable, and then you just tighten that back down. You make sure it's tight. You don't have a mess on your hands. And there you go. Hey, I see you. No, I don't. Lens cap. Well, let's talk about the lens. The lens I have on this camera is an Ingenieux, the French Ingenieux 12 to 120 f2.2 lens. The f-stop range is 2.2 to 22. You can put a zoom rod into it. They do have the zoom rod hole here, you know, the little threaded hole. For me, it's just as easy to use the barrel to zoom in and out. Everything, I'm just so used to doing it, focusing and zooming using the barrel, so I leave it be. Ingenieux did a great job with lenses back in the day. This particular lens, my particular lens, is in decent shape. It's not perfect. It's got some cleaning marks and whatnot, but it does fare. It does a fair job for what it is, and I'm very happy with it. It's the regular CP mount for these types of lenses in the front. You simply unscrew this. I'm not going to take it off right now. You unscrew this ring here, pop the lens out, and boom, there's your port. This camera was made for these types of lenses. This particular lens, and any that you put on here, will have to have their own finder. The viewfinder is attached to the lens. You know what? I will take the lens off so you can see it. There you go. 90-degree angle viewfinder attached to the lens. That essentially makes this a reflex lens system. Again, that's the only way you can use these cameras because they're non-reflex and there's no finder in the camera itself. Put it on exactly the way you took it off. So like I say, I like this lens. It's not the best lens in the world. It's not Zeiss glass, but it's really, really competitive. It's a good lens, all around, basic, fun photography lens. Keep that in mind. The viewfinder. It's a neat little viewfinder. It has a little iris, and it's got an iris, or a little diaphragm inside here. If you turn this little ring, it's a little knurled ring. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. I'll do a close-up for you. But as you turn it, you open and close the little diaphragm, or the iris there, to prevent light from going into your viewfinder and, you know, hitting your film. It also has the diopter adjustment for people like me that can't see. You simply unscrew this little screw in the front here, and then you up, down, up, down. I'm farsighted, so it's harder for me to see close up. So if you're like me, the farther you pull this out, the better you can see. Now you can pull it too far and you can't see at all. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I'll readjust it later, but this is good because you don't want to wear your glasses while you're looking through the viewfinder. They're very intrusive. They hit and they hurt your eyes and you break them. Last couple of things that, and I'm just doing a very basic once over on this camera. I forgot to mention on the back, it does have the counter, a footage counter. Ugh. You can see it here, and there's a little red button next to it. That's to reset the footage counter to 0. Now we're at 0. And the battery checker, you just push this little red button in right here, and it gives you a needle back and forth. You're in the red, you're bad. You're in the green, you're good. It has 2 thread mounts on the bottom. It has a 3/8 and a 1/4 inch for tripod mounting. God, I'm starting to sound like a robot again. All right, to power the camera, let's put the battery back in. And there's 2 different ways that you can do it on this one. And first, and let me say, I'm only speaking to my particular camera. Like I said earlier, there are some subtle differences. I think even within the A series cameras, or these non-reflex cameras, there are some subtle differences. Yours may not look exactly like mine. They made some changes here and there. But for my particular camera, the on and off, once the battery is in, you're on and off. You have one here on the right on the handle, on the side of the handle, and there's one on the back. I don't know if you can see that. This red button, a little rocker switch right here on the back, on, or run, and stop. Now, this back one will override the front one. They are both lock position ones, so when you push this in, you'll probably see that pulley go here. Let me get that. You see it turning. Can't hear it, I bet. Now, if I push the one on the back, you'll also, let me see, I can't see it there. It also starts the camera, but it doesn't, you can't shut it off from the front. You have to always push the switch in the back. Shut it off. And the same goes for the front. If you start it here, you have to turn it off here. So I don't know what the thought process behind that was. It's easy to use the handle one. Maybe when you're standing behind it on the tripod, it's not convenient. It is easy to just hit it here. That's probably where they were going with that. A couple other quick things. I'm going to put the eye cup back on, and it's easy to do. It just wraps around. There's a little groove there. Just tuck it right into the groove. I'm going to put the magazine back on, and then I'm going to show you one modification that I made. Strap the magazine on, put the pulley on. If you followed my channel for any length of time whatsoever, more than a day, you might know that I don't like to put tape on my cameras. My wife, she's really well versed at sewing things, right? Making things. She has a degree in fashion design. So she's really good at sort of designing or helping me design and then making things. And then one of the things she did, and I've had this camera for years, by the way. I'm going to guess in the 15-year range, 10 to 15 years, I don't remember. So she did this for me a long time ago. I simply cut out a little pattern. I traced it on some brown paper. And she made this very quick cover for my magazine, so I don't have to tape up the magazine. It's not meant to be a blimp. It's meant to be a light seal. So all I do, the front on, and then take here in the back, pull it over the magazine like so, and then there's a little Velcro right here on the bottom, like that. Now, we don't have to worry about light getting into the magazine, and I don't have to worry about taping up my cameras, because I don't like the finish pulling off my camera. And it doesn't interfere at all with the belt or the pulley system, and I'll show you, nor does it make any more noise at all. So let's turn it on. Now, you probably can hear it, because it's sitting on the table. You might even be able to hear it now. They're not 100% completely quiet. Some are probably better than others. This particular one, relatively quiet. If you're filming a scene inside like this tiny little office, you might want to throw a towel over the whole camera or a blanket or something like that, just to triple make sure. And also, I forgot to mention, there's a light right here on the front of the camera, on the side front. That's the sync light. And basically what that means is if this light is on, you're not running at your crystal speed of 24 frames per second. You'll see it go on very briefly when you first start the camera because it has to come up to speed. Let me see if you can see this. Can you see it? Yeah. So that's the CP-16. That's at least my CP-16. Like I say, I love this camera. I don't shoot it as often as I should because it's bulky and it's a little bit difficult to get it around and you know, just to take it out and shoot with it. I wish that it had the ability to take a 100-foot daylight load internally and not have to use the magazine, but it is what it is. I suggest you take a look at one of these cameras if you don't have one. I think you got to have one in your fleet. There were some that were Super 16. You were able to have that conversion done. There were professionals that could do that. This is regular or standard 16. And by the way, it's got a great little handle here on top too. Some of the reflex ones I know will have, there's a port or an opening you can open on top of it here. I think you could put a video tap and whatnot in the top of your camera. For me, video tap, I will just use my DIY one. By the way, I've been working on some sort of some tweaks on my DIY video tap, so stay tuned. That might be coming next month. I don't know. So let's talk about what I just did with this camera a couple of days ago. I loaded it up with some relatively old Vision 1 or just Vision stock. This is 250D. This particular stock, which is a 7246, was introduced in 1997 and then discontinued, I think, around 2005, 2006, I don't remember, in favor of Vision 2, which was then replaced by Vision 3. This is an old stock. This is an old camera. You know I like to shoot old stock in old cameras. I wish I could afford to shoot new stock in old cameras. Anyway, so what I did is I loaded the camera up, and you do use daylight spools inside the magazine, especially if you're like me and you process your own film. So much easier to get the film off of the take-up side when it's done. You just pull the spool out. So I took this into my backyard. I mounted it up. Now it's, like I said, 17 pounds, this camera. So you don't want to put it on one of these cheapy little tripods. I was lucky enough to own a company some years ago where I built jibs and dollies and tripods for the movie business. I did that for 17 years. Well, I did some preliminary work on tripods, and I built probably a dozen or two super heavy duty tripods that I myself, I weigh about 200 pounds, could stand on top of. So I mounted this camera on top of my self-built tripod, very heavy duty self-built tripod. I'll show you a picture of it. So I mounted it on top of that. I took my digital recorder out there and my tiny little lapel mic, and I just used this little Tascam DR05X, and I wanted to shoot some sync work with it. So I lined this up, I focused it as good as I could. I will say this, I shot this at about 125 speed, which I cut it in half because of its age. I'm gonna tell you right now, that wasn't enough. I probably should have metered it at about 80. Probably around 80, because it's underexposed. I did what I could to make it not quite as underexposed, but it's always better to go over than under. Well, I didn't. I went under. And you know, I process all my own film, so it's not perfect. It's not lab quality. Old film I process, there's some fogging, there's some streaking, there's some uneven processing, and it's underexposed. But you will be able to tell whether or not I was able to sync it up or not. Now, the way you sync film when you're going to shoot with this, if you're new to film or 16 millimeter or sync sound, you take a clapperboard or a slate, similar to this one, right here. You've seen these. And when you're ready to go, you roll the camera, then you roll your audio, and then you put this in front of the camera and you go just like that. And then when you're in your edit suite, which I use Vegas Pro, let me see if I can show you a picture for some people that don't know, but you line up the actual frame that the slate touches with the spike in the audio. Because in your edit suite, you can see the audio spike. And when you line them up, theoretically, the rest of your film should be in total sync, if your camera's running at the proper speed. Without a lot more of this, let's find out if mine is. There and there are my results. So let me do one quick thing, and let's just mark it. And I do that because I want to, obviously sync up the sound and the picture later. So hopefully I'm in halfway decent focus. I am, like I mentioned earlier, shooting on the old Vision stock. This is the 250D. I'm recording on the same mic I use for my normal show. It's really sunny out here, so I hope I'm not blowing this whole thing out. But I am using my Tascam, which is the recorder I used to use last year when I would do my videos with my Canon T2i. I use my M50 now. I don't use this anymore. I use it for transferring audio for, my Super 8 sound films and things like that. I love this CP-16 camera. I do have a little timer going. It's only loaded with 100 feet of film, and the film probably isn't going to come out beautifully, but it should come out well enough for us to get some idea of just, how well the camera works, how well it syncs up. You may or may not be able to hear any of the ambient noises out here. I seriously doubt you can hear the camera because they're really, really quiet. I'm going to process this film in my homebrew ECN2 recipe, or recipe as some like to call it. And I get splotchiness and I get fogging and I get, all myriad of, results from my ECN2. Perfect for this though. CP-16, beautiful cameras. They've been used on many feature films, independent, low budget feature films, a lot of short films. And they were originally for news gathering, as I'm sure I told you earlier. We're at 2 minutes since I started this film. And like I say, you get about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And I realize it. I know I'm just rambling. This is what I do when I shoot a test roll of film in order to try to sync it up. Or that's just me. I like to ramble. American movie. It was an Academy Award winner, I believe, or if not Academy, maybe it wasn't, but it was it went to Sundance and did very well in Sundance back in the 90s. You might check it out. It's Mark Borchardt and all of his antics and his CP-16. I know it's a favorite amongst a lot of people in the low-budget movie industry, myself included. I love my Aeroflex, but man, is it loud. We're probably past time now, so bon voyage. Like I say, it didn't come out great, but for my test, bing! I put that in just so I don't have to put the sound effect in. I'm happy, I'm content. It synced up absolutely perfectly. That's why you should pick one of these up. This is a phenomenal camera for documentary work, low budget feature film work, short film work, experimental work like I do, just all around excellent little cameras. Keep an eye out because you can usually get them somewhere in the $1,500 range. I got this one for $800 or $900, but I've had it for years. So, $1,000 to $2,000 in that range usually with a decent lens. Keep an eye out. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this. Do you have a CP-16? What am I leaving out? I know I'm missing something. These are great little cameras. Pretty simple. But I know I forgot something, so remind me. Because with my best friend's neighbor's sister's dog walker, ran into a guy the other day whose best friend's cousin told him, well, he used to tell me too, all the time, CP-16's top of the line, baby. If you like videos like this and goofballs like that, do me a huge favor and tap the like button for me. If you would do me another solid, you see this up here? I always put this up here. Subscribe for me. If I've earned your subscription, tap subscribe. And until the very next time that I see every single one of those stunning noggins out there, didn't even move. I'll see all of you on the very next go around.